Thank you. Thank you for this very kind introduction. And I know that I'm standing between you and your lunch. So I will try to keep this brief, entertaining, and scholarly. Handle with care, digital method, sociological imagination, and the Chinese dream. Just a few days ago, I noticed that there was actually a 1988 hit song, Handle with Care, by the band Traveling Wilburys. I know that everyone in this room is too young to hear about that hit back in the 1980s. So my agenda today is to discuss three things related to digital method: big data, big brother, and big picture. So why shall we handle digital data with care? First, power. So August 1st, 2016, a milestone has been reached in human history. So according to Bloomberg, the top 5 global companies by market capitalization were all US and tech companies: AAA, Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, and Facebook. Bloomberg called this as tech sweep. However, just 5 years ago, back in 2011, it still used to be big oil, big bank, and now it is big data firms that deal with the new black gold, and only better because it is real-time, sustainable, anytime, anywhere. Indeed, when inspecting the so-called China's Data Valley back in May 2016, which China hoped to develop as a third force just besides Silicon Valley and Bangalore, Premier Li Keqiang saw that in this very place, the tree of wisdom is growing. Also, in early August, after years of burning billions of dollars competing in the Chinese ride-sharing market, Didi Chuxing announced that it's going to purchase Uber China, including its business, its brand, and its data in mainland China. And this case is very interesting, in particular for people who are interested in framing studies. If you look at the news media in the US, basically they see this as another example of how China makes it difficult for US companies to make it in China. Even as aggressive, as bold as Uber, as bad boy as Travis Kalanick, Uber has to take a U-turn to get outside of China. But if you look at the Chinese media, it's a different story. So one article from Xinhua News Agency very uncharacteristically concerned about big data monopoly. These two companies, Didi and Uber China combined, going to account 93% of the Chinese ride-sharing market. And according to the Xinhua News Agency article, they pointed out what at stake is a big data cake. This is translation, okay? With rich personal information, travel and transportation preferences, geolocational data, integrated with social media and e-commerce data, whose, again, quote from the Xinhua article, whose derivative value is inestimable. So in addition, a considerable portion of this data may be related to national information security, and once a data monopoly related to public interest is established, the Xinhua News Agency article said ad hoc regulatory enforcement can only remedy the situation. So bravo, Xinhua, for being so critical. So with big power also comes big power asymmetry, which leave users in a weak or non-bargaining position at all. Big data firms are collecting everything they can get their hands on because data now is seen not as byproduct, but as key asset. So digital data has become, according to Beer, the space where capitalism acts on or with the user, as well as an arena where different social forces contest with one another. More importantly, given its real-time, participatory, recursive, and accumulative nature, digital data has increasingly become not just the artifact, the trace, or the mediator of human behavior. It has become the foundation, the structure, and container of human behavior. That is, we become data, and data become us. And this explains why tech firms often have difficult to find, difficult to read, difficult to understand privacy policies. They use this privacy policy primarily as a shield, protecting themselves from litigations rather than help users or protect the user privacy. This also explains why claims in many of these privacy policies are actually misleading or purely deceptive. Most of them do not inform users about third-party data use, do not give them any opportunity for expressing their concerns or opt-out. Algorithm here has become generative power, sorting, filtering, evaluating users' status and access to opportunity and service, leading to redlining and marginalization. For instance, it's not a secret anymore that Google search of typical African American names would more likely to return results such as arrest or criminal record. Okay, so why handle digital data with care? Because it's about China. Okay, so this is the dual core of the Chinese model, sometimes also called as the Beijing consensus. Economically, economic development is indeed the hard truth, and politically, political stability trumps everything else. And these two principles have had a good run for a few decades. Since 2012, as President Xi took power, it has been repackaged as the Chinese dream. And the digital media technology in China reflect the many contradictions and the complexities of the society. First, wide access. The latest CNNIC report released at the end of June shows that 52% of Chinese had access to the internet. That's about 700 million people. And for at least the time being, China seems to have solved the dictator dilemma. China has developed the indigenous internet industry. Companies such as Baidu, Alibaba, or Tencent have been dominating the Chinese market. In contrast, global techs have been on charm offensive to thrive in the Chinese market with varying degrees of success. So this class photo taken last fall, September 2015, in Microsoft headquarters at the 8th US-China Internet Industry Forum, basically is a who and who in the US and Chinese tech industry. So can you figure out which company was not in the picture? So how many tech titans can you recognize? Ma Yun is there, right? Yeah. So Notably, Alphabet or Google had no representative in this photo. And this leads me to surveillance and manipulation. The Great Firewall become increasingly powerful. The state has developed sophisticated tactics, including hiring more than 2 million people to post a pro-government message, or using trolls or bots to monitor, manipulate, and manufacture public opinions. So a recent study by Gary King and his team at Harvard using big data, hacked big data, show that censors actually just flood the ground with pro-government message rather than engaging in any discussion of controversial issues. So as slow economic growth in China has become the new norm since the last several years, tightening political control become more intrusive, such as real name registration for telecommunication service, public TV streaming, confession of social activists, stricter control of media, including reinforcement of regulations that forbid major ISPs to produce their own original news. Yet, after all, the state built its legitimacy on economic growth. The government has used internet as the engine of innovation and set Internet Plus as top national strategy to achieve the Chinese dream and build a Qiang nation. And the pun intended Chinese internet users ask if China is building a mighty nation or a world as a Great Wall nation, because these two characters have the same pronunciation. So in the US, more and more analysts see big data as a little bit overhyped and very much undercooked. So leading big data consulting companies use terms such as irrational exuberance, calling for reset, reboot, going back to the basics. According to Gartner, 60% of big data projects in 2016 going to fail. In China right now, big data is big, and it's big from the very top, because back in 2013, President Xi Jinping had already set the tone. Those who control the data control power. In Jack's early study of Chinese internet cafe, he identified this development cycle of digital technology media in China. So it's often start with academics or entrepreneur introduce innovation. And this innovation can be a copycat of product or service developed in the US or other international market. It can be genuine indigenous innovation, capturing Chinese culture or custom. And this new novelty will trigger a round of wild adoption, which will invite, government intervention. And then after a period of consolidation, there will be another round of rapid growth. And if you look at, say, Weibo, WeChat, or ride-sharing service like Didi, they all follow this roadmap. But if we look at big data, it's a quite different story. Obviously, of course, Alibaba or Tencent, they have accumulated huge big data, and they also use these big data to develop innovative financial services. But if we look closer, the development of big data in China has been primarily driven by the government. So in 2014, the first big data exchange was established in Zhongguancun. That's the headquarters of China's Silicon Valley, with very strong government backing and academic connections. In June 2015, after visiting a big data exhibition, President Xi Jinping called for putting China in the top rank of the world in terms of big data collection and application. So in the same year, 2015, numerous big data exchanges were established across the country, often as joint ventures between local government and the private companies. For instance, Foxconn. So what type of company Foxconn is? We have many experts in the audience. Your iPhone, iPad assembler, right? And Foxconn actually invested big in big data in China. It acquired 21% stake in global big data exchange in Guizhou. In November 2015, China released its 13th five-year plan. Guess what was in the plan? Bingo. Yeah, so you save us the trouble to show the video. So I will skip the video, but I'm very happy to share this slide with you. It's prepared by China Plus, a member of China Radio International, and this is, of course, part of China's global media drive to tell the Chinese story well, to accumulate soft power. So a big ticket item in this plan is to develop national big data strategy through opening and sharing data resources. So in spring 2016, the first inter-ministerial joint meeting, including 43 central government departments and units, was held in Beijing to promote the development of big data, at which it was decided to build several big data pilot zone across the country. So big data is now set as the new national competitive advantage. And data is considered as factor of production, just as labor, land, or capital. And China is also using big data to track innovation and entrepreneurship. So if we look at the big data infrastructure, China remains left behind compared to the US or UK or Germany or other leading countries. However, if we look at the ambition and the commitment and the state initiate investment in integrating many different types of big data, China is second to none. Actually, China is the world leader in terms of integrating vertical big data at different levels of the government, as well as horizontal data distributed at different government unit and functional department. So the drive is not just economic, it's highly, highly political. The State Council issued a plan to promote the big data again in August, calling for accessing and sharing government data to improve governance. So one example from my hometown, Beijing. So senior citizens over 80 years old in Beijing, they got a multi-purpose senior citizen card from the government, and they can use this card for a free bus ride, for a free visit to parks, museums, libraries, see a doctor at a discount price, or just use that card to shop. And every time when they swipe the card, guess what happened? Their activity is tracked, and the data is sent to a database specially designed for senior citizens. And what's the purpose? You are definitely thinking too much. So the purpose is to help China to prepare for an aging society, right? Because the population in China is aging very fast. But more controversial is a program of developing a so-called social credit score system, where data sharing between government and major tech corporations like Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, because they have already collected big data from their social media platform, from their search engine, from their e-commerce platform, and the big telecoms and the big banks also just join the game. The big challenge is to integrate different type of data set into one single national system. And once this system is in place, as Premier Li Keqiang pointed out, it will be a situation that the cloud is computing every move you take. So it's kind of a Skynet type of scenario. So back to our notion of handle with care. So why we need to handle digital data with care? Because ownership issues, because these data are often proprietary. We don't know what is withheld, and we don't know what is distorted. And second, so this is a magic word, right? Handle with care, algorithmically. This magical word that make social actors, the corporations, the users, the entrepreneurs disappear, right? It's the algorithm, it's the machine, right? It's not about human being, right? If you are not very happy with Facebook newsfeed, it's nothing to do with Facebook, right? It's the algorithm. So algorithm, let's be clear, is first of all, fundamentally, inherently what? Human. Whether it's about Google's PageRank or Facebook's EdgeRank or other less famous but equally unknown algorithms out there, humans decide what get in and what get out in these algorithms. And human tweak, tinker, change the algorithm. So before it become algorithmically, before we take it for granted, so we need to be really, really clear. Machine decision-making is still human decision-making. Think about those market-shifting algorithm tweaks. Think about the motivations, the reasoning, the strategy, the techniques behind it. They are, again, human and social. Anyone still remember Zynga? Groupon? What happened to them? Algorithmically. So we, as scholars, need to know who create, update, change these algorithms, rather than take it for granted. We need to shed light into those black box. And now, I'm really happy Melissa and Richard has set this stage very nicely. So when we talk about digital research method, what do we mean? What is a digital research method? Well, in his book, Richard talked about there are digitalized tools, there are digital native tools for digital research method. And this data can be digital only, mixed. But here, I would like to emphasize digital is the site, or one of the sites we conduct research. And more importantly, digital is social practice. And we need to understand, to recognize digital data politics and ethics. Data, after all, are not oil or any raw material. Mastery of digital method cannot go without an understanding of the context and structure in which data are collected, stored, exchanged, mined, analyzed, and visualized. So we, as scholars, social scientists, humanities scholars, we are extremely useful. We are not left behind. We are actually very central in this transformation. So now let's talk about value for a while. So when we look at the dominant narrative about big data, when they talk about value, it's often narrowly understood as business insight, business intelligence gained from the patterns and process of big data that will eventually lead to better advertisement, greater sale. For instance, Jeffrey Hammerbacher, considered as the data scientist zero, the first data scientist at Facebook, and who later founded Coursera, pointed out, the best mind of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads. And this is a quotation, right? And that sucks because there are other values probably as important as clicking ads. And I would argue, as scholars, we need to articulate those values. So our theories and the method are useful. Our critical thinking skills are critical, and our storytelling skills are highly in demand, especially illuminating how things get done around data. Getting the data is actually data itself, and we need to illustrate data bias and limitations. Bigger does not necessarily mean better. Convenient may not be efficient. Accessible may not be ethical. Digital data are not necessarily objective or accurate, inclusive or representative, which often have limited information on users' social demographic or psychological attribute. We need to see through the smoke and the mirrors, such as signals of awareness versus signals of action. Unlike is not unlike, is not unlike. How individuals interpret their digital activity may not be easily accessible from big data. We do not need to hold digital research method or data to a higher standard. To be fair, validity, reliability, replicability, temporal confound are questions that any self-respecting research method need to address, digitally or not. Whether theory-driven or data-driven, whether the pendulum swing between inductive or deductive reasoning, we learn very well from our research method 101 that correlation is not causation. And the risk of finding spurious correlations significantly increase with the size of the data set. Good prediction still require a good understanding of how things work. So now we need to think about voice, vantage point, and vernacular when we talk about the value of digital data and the research method. So first, voice. How people and organizations use data to navigate and negotiate their social landscape, to create new patterns of civic practice or political association. How we can facilitate innovative rigorous, yet affordable method that benefit the less privileged, getting them heard beyond their local or national setting. This is especially powerful in societies where the state-controlled official media often monopoly agenda setting and framing. The voice is also about how we, as scholars, as intellectuals, to craft and articulate our voice, to communicate to power and with power. And vantage point, how to make visible the contradictions, the gaps, omissions stemmed from big data. What are the lenses we use? What are our blinkers? What are the bias in the question we ask, the tools we use, and the site we choose to conduct our research, and the dimensions of practice we choose to examine? And vernacular, we need to bear in mind about the global digital divide, not only in terms of access and use of digital technology, control of digital data and agenda, but also users and scholars have uneven access and use of digital data and method, and dramatic different instrumental and expressive gains from such data and method. So handle with data. You know where I'm going? Which side should be up? Theory. Okay. So I do not have all the questions I raised. Another reason we need to handle data with care is we need to bring theory back in. So we have boundless opportunities of applying sociological imagination, that is, connecting personal troubles with public issues, according to C. Mills. And for me, this is the pursuit of the macro-macro link, which would be best enabled by network theory and method to understand the interaction of the social and the digital, which often defy a binary, utopian, dystopian, linear framework. Regardless, we are interested in the transformative power or the limitation of the digital data. We need to reveal historical development and current pattern of big data practice. We need to understand the production, distribution, and use of digital data and method. We need to take into account the dynamic, multi-directional interaction of state, corporations, civic organizations, and interpersonal networks that structure the flow of information, influence, and resources. And we also need to explore the underlying institutional, social, and psychological mechanism, including individual network attribute, multidimensional use, and diverse expressions of social capital and social networks. Again, data are socially constructed, whose production involve various social actors, political parties, corporations, social institutions. I would like to call for a producer's perspective to highlight digital method as a control mechanism, as activism strategy, as well as business model involving a web of institutional and individual actors. So control mechanism is how state, government involved in the production, exchange, measurement, and application of data. For instance, once this social credit scoring system in place, how that's going to affect government and citizen? Activism strategy, how activists and also individual citizens at the transnational, national, and local level. Got it? Thank you. I still 10 more minutes to go. To challenge response, criticize the production, exchange, management, and application of digital data. But more importantly, I'm going to here first. So more importantly, I'm interested in the economics, the business model of big data. So how can we examine organizational, social, economic, political factors that affect the economics, the business model, the industrial field of data, the web of investors, suppliers, clients, and other organizational intermediaries, the hardware and software infrastructure, applications, and how this system interconnected with one another, and how algorithms are designed, developed, tweaked, how data feed into the algorithms, how and what is the machine actually learning, and how users are profiled. That is, we need a critical social study of data epistemology and methodology, as well as how this data and method reproduce and repropose organizational meaning and value. So now I actually prepared this slide before I saw your banner. So I think to better understand big data or digital data, we seriously need a transnational comparative approach. Transnational comparative analysis across multiple cases, platforms, or societies are in a better position to capture the device, the dynamic dilemmas, as well as the dividend of digital method with greater depth and granularity. So, for instance, Ming Jiang's 2014 research about the business and politics of search engine, comparing Baidu and Google's search result, really shows how political regime and the pursuit of profit can structure the architecture and performance of search engine, distorting the search result, but also distorting our perceived social reality. And so in Wu and Tanija's 2016 GCMC study of reimagining the internet geography, so they analyzed shared user traffic of the top 1,000 websites in the world in 3 different time points, and this shows a significant growing cultural proximity and de-westernization in the global south, demonstrating that internet as selective connections between people and the information based on cultural proximity. So my notion is that so the glass is maybe half full because relatively marginal, sparsely connected ages that may have the potential to enable new fusions of culture, identity, and practice. The emergence of a transnational media space further enables new data practice. So I don't think I have much time to talk about my own research on privacy. I think privacy management and practice are now the core of digital capitalism. So we know that a lot of studies looking at privacy and often from an individual perspective. And there's this notion of privacy paradox, right? That, so on the one hand, users are concerned about their privacy. On the other hand, they nonetheless treat their personal data for free or cheap service. And if you look at the industry's narrative of these privacy paradox or trade-off, they would say, okay, users, they don't care, right? Oh, privacy is dead. Privacy is an anomaly. There's nothing for you to care about. Oh, if you still care, how old are you, right? This is a generational issue, right? Just wait until all those who care about die out, right? According to Mark Zuckerberg, hey, the social norm has already changed, right? They don't care anymore. And even they say they care, actually they don't. Right? So if you look at these master frames employed by the industry, what is it about? So my take from this is we need to level up. We need to move up our analysis of privacy issues from how individuals manage their privacy to how privacy is managed by the industry or produced by the industry. And to do that, we need, again, a network producer perspective looking at how these institutional and individual actors are interconnected with one another in this production of privacy policy and management, including the entrepreneurs, including the VCs, including the dominating platforms, but also regulators, but also activists, users, and customers. And to do that, we really need to have a mixed method that include ethnographic observation, interviews, survey, as well as digital trace data so that they can enrich one another, they can empower one another. Okay, so I would conclude with the slide I start. Why we need to handle digital research method and data with care? Because it's about power. And we are having a data turn in communication and media studies. And as communication and media scholars, we are so privileged to have this front row seat. We are so blessed, but we are also need to handle this data turn with care. And I will conclude with a quote from C. Wright Mills, because we know that you inherit and are carrying on the tradition of classic social analysis. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you, Wenhong, for the wonderful talk. And I especially like that you introduced to us this bigger picture of the battle over the jurisdiction of the study of the social, right? So this is like a very critical moment right now. So now we have the question and answer session. So who have questions?
Thank you for your talk. I find it quite interesting. I'm interested in terminology.
Sorry, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Matthew Stender. I work as a project strategist for the transparency platform onlinecensorship.org. The word surveillance capitalism has been used a lot, and I wanted to, I guess, first ask if, like, data capitalism, if you find the semantic difference between data capitalism and surveillance capitalism an important distinction, and even kind of the internalization of how both social scientists, but also messaging, like your last slide about the interconnectedness of academia and activists, and even inside pressuring VC to see these things differently. I guess that's the first part of the question. But then, do you feel that the industry as a whole, and I guess that as we're creating new ways of seeing digital data, that the academic pursuits of these digital research methods are making their way down into things like into the venture capitalists of Silicon Valley, or do you think that it's somewhat still an insulated bubble? And if so, what do we need to do to break past and actually kind of target the people that are funding startups and trading stocks on NASDAQ and whatnot? So I guess in short, to sum that up, how can academia, and as we're talking about this cutting edge, the front row seats to digital survey, digital methods, how can we get outside of the echo chamber of academia and actually in front of people and in front of people's eyes, and as well as the funding mechanisms of not just Silicon Valley, but also big data companies in China as well?
Thank you very much for this question. I think thank you also actually for giving me this opportunity to further elaborate a little bit on our research on privacy management in the digital media industry. You are totally right. Like, it's not just the Silicon Valley. It's actually a global phenomenon. We actually look at the geographic distribution of founders as well as their investors in the mobile technology industry. And of course, you would see like Silicon Valley, New York City, Seattle, Chicago, or even Austin, where I come from, top on the list. But it's actually a global phenomenon. You would see like cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Hangzhou, Hong Kong, Tokyo, like so. In Europe, like Frankfurt, Berlin, London, Madrid, they are all on the map. Yeah, and I feel like as scholars, this makes our research very interesting and also very challenging, because to really capture that localized landscape, we often need to do multi-site research, and that's probably require a lot of time, energy, funding, as well as collaborations with colleagues across the world. But I think nonetheless is worth of the effort, because I think, as Angela just talked about, it's a high time right now. Like, because of the data industry are changing, evolving very fast, and in a few years, everything will become just, part of our digital infrastructure and environment, and it's very easily for the younger generation take it for granted. So I think, we as I don't know how you look at yourself, but me as a digital immigrant, and I think, we have high value because we still remember the old days, right? So I think, my answer is just do more research. Yeah, because that's the best we can, right? The best thing we can do, yeah.
Other question? Richard.
Thanks very much for a really interesting presentation. My question concerns whether you see a distinction between big data methods and digital methods.
That's a great question, and I think you probably have a better answer than me. From my very humble opinion, I think a digital method is a part of big data method.
Okay.
But my understanding of digital methods include both natively digital, but also the migrated social science research method. And to fully understand digital, we need to put digital in the social. So I think all the research methods would be helpful, from ethnography to interview to digital trace data to big data there, and policy research. They are all going to contribute important pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, the reason why I ask that is because I think, at least to me, digital methods are seek to try to be what some people call quali-quanti.
Mm-hmm.
So that they, in fact, try to mix both our hermeneutic and interpretive, which is oftentimes missing in the big data methods, with a quantitative. That's one thing. But another thing is that I think digital methods also is happy with small data. Like, it's just one website.
Yeah.
Or and so I think it's interesting now for me, having listened to your talk, to sort of try to make these distinctions even, or try to make an argument for these distinctions, because I've heard on a number of occasions this idea that that big data methods are digital methods when I'm not sure that they are, or I'm just trying to conceive of the difference, and the difference is not necessarily between big data and digital methods. The difference for a social researcher isn't necessarily the mixed methods. Generally, so
Yes.
mixing
Yeah.
the ethnographic with the traditional social scientific instrumentarium, so the surveys and the interviews and the things like that.
Yeah, I
But-
think this goes back to the chart. I actually got the insight inspired from your work. If we look at digital data or big data, so is this tool? Is this data? Or is this a site? Or is this a practice? And I think different scholars would have very different input. And for me, I think all these notions are extremely valid. But we need probably bring these different pieces together. And for me, I think the most important, this is the practice. This is the core of the capitalism we are right now. And this is also, not just capitalism, digital capitalism, or surveillance or data capitalism. This is also what's going on in many authoritarian regimes, right? So I think this is going to fundamentally change our society. From the very core, and it's going also to change many of the social mechanisms that has great influence on how our society work, and how we gain resources, how we work, play, develop, perform ourselves. So I do think all these research methods are valid, but I think we also need to probably take a critical distance from our method and see exactly what kind of phenomenon we are looking at, because we need to look back to the data. We need to have this critical distance, have this sociological imagination to see this data. They create personal troubles. They define public agenda, public issues, and they also connect. They serve as this very powerful, meaningful, but increasingly invisible link between these personal troubles and the public issues. So again, I think it's so wonderful that the organizers have these research summit and the workshop right now, because it's a great time. It's also a very critical time for us to fully understand digital method and data.